Hello there, and welcome to the final part of this review series, Helix Station Episode 6, entitled Meltdown. I will also be covering my own final thoughts on the audio drama after my review of this final episode, so stay tuned for that. Okay, so we find out the scientist's name is Lennox. He is indeed very much alive and is determined to protect Juniper, his daughter. She explains that Percy has been protecting her and that he should put the gun down, and Percy demands to know who the dead man from earlier was. Turns out he was an inmate from Black Iron who helped smuggle the creature, known as a biophage, out of the prison and onto the station. Unfortunately, the guy was killed by the same class of robotic guard that killed Tanaka, so Lennox transferred some of his memories from his implant to the dead man to make it look like it was him who had been killed. How that is done isn't described. After that, Lennox and Juniper got separated, and Lennox got lost. Juniper obviously knew about the deception that he wasn't actually dead, but was keeping it to herself when she encountered the group in case one of the men, either her father or the inmate, could come and rescue her. But she's grown to trust Percy since and decided not to mention it. Percy tells Lennox that everything that has happened is essentially his fault, and it turns out that he didn't realise that there were gummers on board and that many of them are probably now infected. His argument is that he needed proof if anyone was going to believe his story about what was happening in the lab, and that's why he brought the organism to Helix Station. He is overcome by guilt and lowers the gun on Percy. At this moment, Prendergast gets back in touch and he's in bad shape. The gummers have shown up at the command station and they're all infected. The signal cuts out again due to the radiation and they decide to proceed with the plan. But Percy has an attack of withdrawal as she ran out of her medication at the end of the last episode. She wants Juniper to help her unlock the reactor rather than trusting to Lennox. They do it. Percy sets the explosives, all the while with the PTSD biting deep, and they run for it as the charges are set for 10 minutes, spurred on by Prendergast saying that a horde of infected gummers is coming for them. He's surprised that Lennox is alive and tells him to fly Percy and Juniper out. Lennox has a chip as a Black Iron employee, so he'll be able to fly the ship. He gets Percy, Lennox and Juniper on the right track and shoots himself before the infected gummers get to him. Percy ends up getting blinded in a tussle with the gummers. The three of them get on the ship and leave the station just before it blows up. Juniper takes Percy to the med bay to get some rest. Time passes and she snaps awake, roused by a loud banging sound. The infected Metzger has found his way on board. Long story short, Percy ends up killing him but is wounded and dies of her injuries soon afterwards. The episode ends with Juniper and Lennox deciding to find the outer way to continue the fight against the UJC and Black Iron in Percy's memory. To avoid repeating myself too much, and for the sake of brevity basically, to keep this as short as possible, I'm going to incorporate my thoughts on this episode into my final thoughts on the audio drama as a whole. Okay, well, I thought I would share some of my final thoughts about the audio drama as a whole, as I said at the end of the last episode. Ultimately, I enjoyed it. It's fast-paced, simply written, and provides a nice tie-in with the lore of the Callisto Protocol video game. As I say, audio dramas do tend to be faster-paced and with shallower characterization than TV shows or films in my experience, but that's more a feature of the medium rather than a criticism. I feel it was probably designed as a flavour piece to tell a small but related story set in the same universe as the game, and it does that well. As far as the story itself goes, it reminded me in some ways of Aliens. A group of people, slowly whittled down by threats and circumstances, ending up with a female character who has PTSD and a child. Of course, the ending is different here, and the story overall isn't as rich as Aliens, but I think it does have elements in common with it, as do many stories in the genre. The story is, of course, flawed, particularly towards the end, which does feel a little rushed to me. For example, the way they find Lennox, Juniper's father, and how easily he's swayed to their cause is a little unrealistic in a way, I think. But then time is short, many people have died because of what he's done, and his daughter is involved, so maybe not. He's already feeling guilty about what he's done, after all. The infected gummers essentially represent a clean way of rounding off Prendergast's story. He kills himself after being surrounded by them, and it also adds pathos. Lennox's actions have brought these people even lower. Percy's fight with the Metzger creature is pretty uneventful, really. It's quite quick, but thematically it is necessary. It can be seen as the station's final attempt at killing Percy, and also given the antagonistic relationship between Metzger and Percy, it was a necessary showdown, particularly given that he killed Kane earlier on in the story, kind of settling that last debt before she dies. Without it, I think the audience would have felt unsatisfied, and again, it's part of the genre, going all the way back to Aliens and Alien, which this story definitely seeks kinship with. I think what helps the story punch slightly above its weight is the casting of Gwendoline Christie in the lead role. Her portrayal of complex PTSD is accurate as far as I can tell, and I think as nuanced as the writing allows for. It's nice that she suffers withdrawal when she's run out of medication, for example, and her delivery of some of the lines displays an awareness of the vulnerable situation her character's condition would have left her in. We do get the sense that her fate and that of the station are linked. As the station is melting down, Percy seems to be melting down, which gives the title of the last episode a double meaning. When the station is destroyed, there is little more for her character to do, and she dies after having been wounded in the battle with the station, the loss of her eyes, of course. Her blindness can be seen as a reflection of her inner darkness, and the fact that she has seen too much horror in her life being reflected physically, and it makes her passing all the more poignant at the end of the story. The fact that Juniper and Lennox decide to carry on the fight, essentially in Percy's name, provides us with hope that she has not died in vain. Whether she has or not, however, does remain to be seen, and I'm sure there will be more media set in this universe. It particularly lends itself to many literary possibilities, if nothing else, and I wouldn't be surprised either if a DLC where the player fills Percy's shoes might be on the cards in the future. Maybe she'll get a campaign of her own in a prequel, I don't know, but it would be interesting to see if they could get Gwendoline Christie to reprise the role. In conclusion then, Callisto Protocol Helix Station does its job. It adds to the lore of the game by setting another story in that world, and it's short and lightly written enough to be entertaining, without taking the spotlight off the source material, which is quite important. It's well acted, and although it is a little formulaic and predictable in parts, I think it serves its purpose of adding an extra stitch or two to the tapestry of the Callisto Protocol universe as a companion piece. It also sets up the possibility for more stories set in the universe, and that can only be a good thing in my view. It'll be cool to see where they take it. However, as always, And with all the above being said, I hope that you have enjoyed this short review series on Callisto Protocol Helix Station. It's been fun to make, and I hope has been somewhat entertaining to listen to. Please like, share, comment and subscribe. Thank you very much for listening to this video, and indeed this series, and I will be back with more content for you soon. Bye for now.